wet areas, particularly if it's perhaps a seasonal runoff in the springtime, one of the best solutions is to use flat stepping stones firmly embedded in the treadway. And the hikers can walk across those and keep their feet dry. Where the trail goes through a wet, boggy area, or if there's water flowing across the trail from one side to the other, one of the solutions is to do what we call turnpiking. Here we see an example of turnpiking on a very large scale. The basic concept is to put logs along the trail on either side, fasten them in place with wooden or steel stakes, and then to dig out material from the outside and pile it into the middle. You can see in this area that the trail maintenance workers have dug a channel along the side of the trail, and they've taken that earth and piled it into the center, and in addition to that they brought gravel from outside by wheelbarrow and piled it in here to give a really good high, dry treadway. This can be done on a much smaller scale, of course, and you can also use different types of material to surface your trail. For instance, you could bring in wood chips to pile between the logs as well. If you use wood chips, though, make sure that the layer of wood chips is at least 4 inches thick. This keeps the wood chips high and dry above the wet surface below them. Where there's water draining across the trail from one side to the other, one of the things that you can do, and this works especially well in conjunction with turnpiking, is to build some kind of a drainage channel under the trail. This could be done with a culvert pipe, or as you see here, there's an example of a kind of a box culvert with decking boards on top. It has plenty of capacity. It's easy to keep clean in case it gets plugged up with leaves and so on. Here we have a boardwalk, which we use to carry the trail across wet, swampy areas. The main features of a boardwalk are sleepers, which are big cedar logs placed directly on the wet earth, stringers, which are basically beams that run from one sleeper to the next, and then deck boards that are placed on top. These deck boards are a little wider apart than we would like to see them. This illustrates an older standard where we used to put a 1.5 inch space between the deck boards. See, the dog is getting his paw down in the cracks. Why we changed the standards? Because it was uncomfortable for dogs to walk on this boardwalk. Now we've reduced that to only 3/4 of an inch. The length of the deck boards should be preferably 32 inches, but it could be as little as 24 inches or 60 centimeters, which matches the width of the treadway. We use a boardwalk to cross wet areas when we can't find any other solutions to the problem. Boardwalks are pretty expensive to build and require a lot of labor, and this wood is only going to last maybe 15 or 20 years. So before we do this, we want to make sure that we've got the right solution. When it's not possible to avoid steep slopes on the trail, then the use of steps is recommended. These are cedar logs which make a good job. They make it easier for the hiker to come down the hill and will also prevent erosion, which we would like to avoid on the trail. You'll notice that these are held in place with steel angle iron bars, and that it's pounded well down into the soil below the level of the step, and nails are placed through holes in the angle iron into the step so that the angle iron bars won't push up with the frost and they stay attached firmly to the logs.
Oh my God, it's really hard work. It's not as easy as it seems. It's not.
Other material that you could use to make steps would include pressure-treated lumber, old railway ties, or big flat stones if they happen to be available in the area. When the trail has to be built on the side of a hill, it's a good idea to provide some kind of a retaining structure such as these side logs to hold the treadway in place. Side logs are made, in this case, of cedar fence posts, held in place with steel angle iron, once again fastened with nails to make sure that it stays in place. And after the log has been placed here, the earth of the slope is brought across to form a flat treadway on which to walk. One of the techniques we use to control water on the trail is the installation of a water bar. Here's an example of one here. In this case, water has a tendency to flow down the trail in this direction. If we didn't put this here, it would continue on the trail, perhaps lay there and become a big muddy puddle. So this is installed to direct the water off to the lower area behind me. We really should try and have a bit of a ditch, as you see here in front, but take that material and pile it behind the water bar so that there's no danger of the water undercutting it. So I'm going to do a little work here and set this water bar a little bit lower. Okay, I'm using a mattock here. This is one of the places where we use a mattock for moving a little bit of earth and trimming. As I get further down here on the low end of the water bar, I have to cut deeper. The dirt that I take out of this trench that I'm excavating will be put on the back side of the water bar so that it'll block the passage of any water that may try to undercut the water bar. I'm taking all the dirt away from the low end here because this is where I want the water to drain out. And we need that dirt piled in behind the water bar. When I think I've got the trench for this log on about the right slope and deep enough, then I'll try putting a log in and see whether we have a good fit or not. It's a little high in the middle. Too high through here. It's rocking on it. Yes, this looks pretty good. Now we need to fasten that in place. Once you have the log set in place, then it should be fastened by driving in stakes on an angle from either side of it. Generally, this is a good place to use a sledgehammer, and you may be better off to use pressure-treated wood stakes if you have them available. In this case, I'm using some natural material I found in the forest. The wooden stakes that hold this water bar in place are placed out at the end of the water bar off the traveled portion of the trail. And you see that they're angled from the top that way and that way, so that they have a tendency to hold this log down in place. In order to finish this job, we now have to take that earth that we excavated for the log and place it behind the log, pack it down nicely and firmly so that there will be no chance of water that comes down infiltrating underneath the log and undercutting it. What we want to make sure of is that we have the area on the uphill side of the log lower than the area that's on the downhill side. We're effectively creating a dam across the trail, which is going to divert water off the trail. So we need a low area down here, and we need to have the area underneath the log sealed so that water won't try to undercut. Well, if I'm really breathing hard, then I know I've done it. Now here's a standard Bruce Trail stile, which we use to get over a fence without damaging the fence. You can see that it's made almost entirely of 2x4s. The legs of the stile are made out of pressure-treated 2x4s, as are the steps and this diagonal brace, which prevents the stile from going sideways. Steps are screwed on with deck screws. We also have nailed in here 2x2 spacers in between the steps, so that even if the screws let go, the step would still be held in place by the spacers. The legs of the stile are buried in the ground at least 6 inches, and preferably more, and this makes sure that the stile will remain steady when people are climbing over it. Holding the two sides of the stile together at the lower level is a 2x4 cross brace screwed on with deck screws, so that it remains good and sturdy. On top here, we have a small platform for the hiker to turn around on when he gets to the top. The two halves of the stile are held together with a carriage bolt, which is inserted with the head on the inside part where the hiker passes, and the nut is on the other end, on the outside. Here's a bridge over a medium-sized creek. Although you wouldn't know it to look at it now, there's actually a fair amount of water flowing under here in the spring of the year. This bridge is formed by putting two big cedar tree trunks across the creek and sitting those up on top of good firm foundations, such as the rock cribs that we have at either end here. In building a bridge, it's important to have good, strong foundations at both ends. The rock crib that you see on this one is a good example. This is fairly simple. It's built out of pressure-treated 6x6 lumber filled with stones that were available very abundantly in this site. This makes a really good, strong foundation for this bridge. In building your rock crib for your bridge foundation, it's also possible to incorporate steps to bring the hiker easily up to the elevation of the bridge deck. The preferred width of the bridge deck is a minimum of 32 inches. This is comfortable for the hiker, and it also cuts very conveniently out of an 8-foot piece of lumber. The bridge also has a handrail because the bridge surface is more than 1 meter above the water surface. The handrail is made out of 2x4s, sitting on a 2x4 upright, with an angle brace down to an extension of the deck boards to give it some strength. We also have braces underneath to the bottom of the logs to give additional firmness there. Now if we move along here towards the end, you see we have one more diagonal brace running lengthwise in the handrail so that it won't be wobbly from end to end. Okay, so here we have a very nice example of a bridge. It has all the essential features that we need. A rock crib at the end, steps incorporated into the crib to get you up to the elevation of the bridge deck. The bridge deck is 32 inches in width, which is the preferred width. It's very comfortable for hiking on. Finally, we have our handrail along the right-hand side